All right, so if you got your Bible or your app or your phone or whatever you're going to use, go to the Gospel of John. Gospel of John. Everybody know where it's at?
Sorry.
All right, we're getting there. All right, cool. John chapter 11. And we're going to be talking about tears and the power of tears. So while y'all are flipping, I'm going to tell you a story. So there was this time when, so in my hometown, and a lot of small towns are like this, so like football is more of a equal economic class sport. Like people from that are poor and rich and middle class, they all play football. And basketball's kind of the same way, but baseball in my hometown was an upper middle class and upper class sport. So a lot of the poor kids like me, you didn't even try out for baseball. Number one, because you didn't have a bat. I had this old, I can't remember, it was an old Walmart bat. Back when Walmart didn't sell anything but like Walmart products. I mean, it was a bad deal. It was like I don't even know if it had a name, but I hit rocks with it. We had a gravel driveway, and I would throw rocks up in the air and I would hit it. So I actually went and tried out for the baseball team. And what happened was I got bullied the entire tryout. And anybody in here, y'all ever get, when you get really mad, you cry? Right? Okay. So I cried during the tryout. Turns out, while I was taking batting practice, I had just tears running. Turns out it was the best I had ever hit in the entire time that I played ball. I made the team, and then I quit the next year because it was stupid. I liked football better. But I made the team, and that's kind of what I want to talk to you about, is the power of our tears. And I want to look at, and we're not going to read all of John chapter 11 because it's pretty lengthy. What we're going to talk about, though, what we're going to focus on, somebody just glance through John chapter 11 and tell me what you think that chapter's about. What do you think that chapter's about?
Oh, it's Lazarus.
Yeah. Who's Lazarus?
He was Jesus' friend.
He was Jesus' best friend.
He was pretty close. So it's safe to say that Jesus cared a lot about Lazarus, right? I'm actually getting there right now on my stuff. So what happens, what I want you guys to understand is tears can be powerful if we allow them to fall. So some of us, especially guys, we're all like, I don't cry, right? And I think what's that thing that people share on Facebook? I think somebody's cutting onions or something. I'm not crying. That's not me. There's something going on, but it has nothing to do with me, being emotional at all. I'm not emotional. I'm a guy, right? I cry sometimes, and we need to allow those tears to fall because they can be powerful, and we're able to when other people are crying, when we cry with them, and that's actually, Paul talks about that, weeping with those who weep. That can be a bonding experience, and that can emotionally help somebody else if we're willing to let our tears fall with them. They can be powerful. And then our tears can show a range of emotions all at one time. You can be sad, you can be angry. Anybody ever cry happy tears? Some of us, yeah. I don't get that happy. It just, for whatever reason, my tear factor only works on the negative spectrum. I don't get happy enough to cry. But some people do. Some people cry happy tears. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a range of emotions, and you can even be kind of in between. You can be like happy and mad, or it can go run the whole course. So what we need to realize is that tears don't represent weakness. Especially guys. Robert, especially you. But you understand that tears don't represent weakness. Because what the culture in our society will tell you, especially for guys, I'm sorry, ladies, I'm picking on the guys right now, but
You're fine.
it's a big deal for guys because society will tell you you're not supposed to cry. And some of y'all are in sports, some of y'all are in band, you know. There's times when you hear a coach or somebody gets hurt and they say, oh, just walk it off. Just walk it off. Don't cry, walk it off. There's no shame in crying. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't represent weakness because you shed a tear. That's, and I'll show you the ultimate example of that in a little bit. So, the reason that Jesus was emotionally attached to Lazarus and the reason that they were buddies is because, Jesus, this was a stopping point. He would stop at Lazarus' house multiple times. If you read through all the Gospels and you check out everything that, in Jesus' travels, that was kind of like this waypoint, right? It was like, what's the one planet in Mandalorian where they always stop at, or they end up with what was the first planet that they were on? What was that called?
I don't think it was Tatooine.
No, but we'll just say Tatooine because Tatooine was big into Star Wars. So it was like a waypoint. Every time I go through here, I gotta stop, right? And there's two separate stories of Jesus stopping there, and it was Lazarus, and then he had a sister named Mary and Martha. And he would hang out, and there's two different distinct stories of him hanging out at their house and things happening, and both of them are teachable moments. So he was emotionally involved with them. He had friendships with them, very close friendships. So how many of you have acquaintances? Right? How many of you have really good friends? How many of you differentiate the two? Do you tell your acquaintances everything? No? You don't even tell them most things, right? But your BFF, right? You tell pretty much everything. Riley, do you tell Lauren pretty much everything that goes? Yeah, see? But you don't tell me. And we're acquaintances, right? I don't think I can handle all the stuff that you would tell me, so you just look mischievous behind your mask. You're so mischievous behind the red hair and the mask. So scary. So scary. So, and in this passage, so in chapter 11, there's that. Remember that when I asked y'all to memorize some verses and I told you there was one verse that you couldn't use?
Yes.
Which, does anybody else?
Jesus wept.
Yes, Jesus wept. Can't use. So this is where Jesus wept is found, right? It's in this chapter 11. This is where Jesus wept is found. And I want to show you how important it is to understand why and why it was important that Jesus wept. Because obviously it was important or they wouldn't have put it in the account, right? I mean, does anybody think that there's non-important information in the Bible? Come on. Anybody? It's not a rhetorical question. Somebody tell me. Christian, is there anything non-important in the Bible? No? Pretty much everything's kind of important.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you're talking about you've got a guy that's trying to describe the life of Jesus, they're skipping a lot of stuff, right? He's skipping through time and giving you glimpses. He wouldn't have included Jesus wept unless it was extremely important. So here's what I want to get to you today is everyone should embrace the power of tears because there's 3 benefits to those tears. Okay? Now I want to go back, I want to step through. So here's the deal with chapter 11 is Jesus is off somewhere else and somebody comes to him and says, hey, Lazarus he's sick, he's fixing to die. And Jesus is like, okay, all right. So in verse 10 it says, but at night there's a danger of stumbling because they have no light. Then he said, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but now we'll go wake him up. So what does that mean? That Lazarus had fallen asleep. So they'd already told him he was sick and he was about to die, and then Jesus says, our friend Lazarus is asleep. What does that mean? He's dead. Y'all are smarter than his disciples. Because check out what Jesus' disciples says, that, Lord, if he's sleeping, then he'll get better. And I can just picture Jesus going, come on, dog. Come on, man. Y'all been walking with me this long, and you know that I don't speak that way. I'm not just going to say he's sleeping because he's sleeping. He's dead. And, Jesus didn't get in a hurry, right? So if somebody was to tell you, like, let's take, for instance, who can I pick on? Let me pick on Marty. So if Marty was outside, because you're accident prone, so this analogy really works well. So Marty's outside, and we had all that snow, all those mounds of snow out there that were shoveled up, right? And Marty, let's say Marty was walking along the top of those, and then all of a sudden he just went down, because you're not very tall, and those mounds were like, when they did them, they were like 10 foot tall.
You're killing me.
And then somebody came in and said, hey, Marty's suffocating in the snow. Would you expect me to run or just say, yeah, I'll be there in a minute?
Wait a couple days.
Why didn't the person who told you I'm suffocating in the snow do anything?
Because maybe it was Robert, and he's not very tall either. So then Robert knew that if he got up there and got on that snow, that he was going to suffocate too. So
No, it was me. I just didn't want to.
That definitely sounds like something.
So I would, you would expect me to run and hurry to come out there, right? And that's what they were expecting Jesus to do when they told him that Lazarus was sick. But Jesus didn't run and hurry, because he knew some other things that were going to happen. So the disciples said, Lord, he's sleeping, he'll get better. And Jesus was like, no, Lazarus is dead. And then he said this, he says, and for your sakes, I'm glad I wasn't there. For now you will really believe. Come, let's go see him. So they go, and they go to, the town's called Bethany. And they go there, and they're told that Lazarus has been in his grave for 4 days already.
4 days.
So, 4 days in a grave. Like, this is not like 4 days here in an air-conditioned, climate-controlled morgue where, this is 4 days in the desert. He was probably fairly ripe, I would imagine. So, in verse 20 it says, when Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary stayed in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died, but even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask. And Jesus told her, yes, he will rise, your brother will rise again. So, she doesn't understand this, right? What she understands, what she thinks he's saying is that, yeah, he'll rise again when at the resurrection at the last day, right? When God decides, okay, we're going to raise everybody up. So here's one way that tears will benefit us. They give us honesty in our questions to God. Because she could have asked the question, Lord, what do you mean by that? Right? And sometimes your tears can clarify your thinking. And they can be a breakthrough point for when you're wanting to ask God a question and you just can't quite get it out because you're just kind of stuck. And sometimes for me personally, I don't want to ask because I feel like I'm an idiot. I shouldn't have to ask this question. I'm a pastor. Or I've been a Christian a long time. Or my mom and dad are Christians, and I can't even ask them because then they'll wonder what's wrong with me if I ask this question. And then you get confused, and then the tears come. But those tears can help by giving us honesty in our questions. That's a breakthrough point. And then our tears can cleanse those negative feelings that we have when we ask questions. Crying can be a cleansing thing. Okay. You ever heard the phrase, just get that off your chest? Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta get something off your chest, and sometimes crying is the best way to do that. Also, our tears can create clarity in our motives. So sometimes you'll kind of fib yourself for a little while. You'll kind of tell yourself one thing, but in the back of your mind, you know that it's really something else, and then eventually you just get frustrated enough, and then those tears can come, and they can give you clarity to your motives. Oh, so this is why I was telling myself this, is because I didn't really want to ask God this question, but now I'm going to ask Him. And then your tears can prepare you to receive the answers from God. Because those answers are going to be, could be anything. Had Martha asked Jesus, said, hey, what do you mean by that? He would have answered the question. Instead of her assuming, that she already knew. So, the next thing I want to talk about is that tears benefit us by moving the very Spirit of God. Now, y'all may be thinking, no, my tears are not going to move God at all. And I'll be honest with you, some won't. I mean, if you stub your toe and you cry a little tear, God's going to feel sorry for you, but, because He loves you as His child, but that's not the kind of move that I'm talking about, right? And there are some people that would tell you, some pastors and some other people that say, well, no, they can't. Your tears don't move the very Spirit of God. But if you read the text in John chapter 11, 32 through 34, and I'll read it to you, you'll see that I'm right. When Mary arrives, and she's the other sister of Lazarus. When Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she fell at His feet and said, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. Same thing that her sister said. When Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within Him, and He was deeply troubled. So who is Jesus? Not a rhetorical question. Who is Jesus?
The Messiah.
Okay. Specific title. I need a specific title. What am I looking for? Okay, what?
God.
Yeah. God in the flesh, right? So, if God in the flesh was moved by seeing her tears and the tears of those around Him, does it not make sense to you that He's moved by your tears and the tears of those around you? Of course He is. Now there's a couple of reasons why He was deeply angered. One was that they were sad. The other was that, I think, and this is just Brad International version, is that He was mad because sin entered the world, and this was not Lazarus dying that was not the original intention. None of us dying, that was not the original plan. That was not when we were created, when God created Adam and Eve, that was not in the cards, right? That was not His vision for us. That was not His purpose for us. We were not supposed to be sinful. So I think Jesus was mad because this wasn't the way it was supposed to be. And He was probably mad at Satan too. Had you not done what you did, we wouldn't be here right now. They wouldn't be crying. And your tears can influence God's response to you. And they're seen and they're felt and they move the Spirit of God, and they're important to God. And for those reasons, we can safely say that God cares about our tears. And what do you mean by influence? Well, the next question in verse 34, when it said that Jesus was troubled, He says, where have you put Him? And then in verse 35 it says, then Jesus wept. And if you scroll down to verse 38, it says Jesus was still angry when He arrived at the tomb. So He was still mad. Even though He knew. So here's the kicker on this, right? He already knew when they came and told Him that Lazarus was sick. He already knew what was going to, the whole unfolding. right? He knew that he was going to go, and he knew that they were going to be crying, and he knew that Lazarus was going to be dead, and he knew he was going to raise him back to life before it started. Before the first person showed up and said Lazarus is sick, he already knew, but he was still angry. He still cared that much about our tears that it angered him and moved him that much. And our tears benefit us by revealing God's power to comfort us. There's several different ways that God will comfort us. I'm going to show you that he comforts them, Mary and Martha, in verse 43. Then Jesus shouted, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave clothes, his face wrapped in a headcloth. Jesus told them, unwrap him and let him go. That's some comfort, right? Now, I'm not saying go home and, if somebody that's close to you is on their deathbed to expect this same experience. Could it happen? God can do whatever he wants to do. Okay? I'm not putting limits and boundaries on what he can do. Just saying that if he doesn't do what you ask him to do, he's got another plan. But sometimes so I asked you a while ago if you cried happy tears. You ever cried like tears of joy? It's totally different, right? Yes, Marty, it is. Tears of joy and happy tears are different. Have you ever cried, Marty?
Yes, multiple times.
Awesome. At least Marty is a real man.
If you go through the amount of pain I go through,
I can see
you'll
that.
cry all the time.
Yeah, I probably would. I would have cried getting hit in the head with that boot, but that's just me. And that's going to be on Marty. Your head getting hit. See, you missed all this because we're recording homework for me. So Marty's head getting hit with a boot is going to college. Way to go, Marty.
What?
I'll tell you later. So, but sometimes our tears of joy happen when things go like, I'll give you a personal example of this. So my dad was in the hospital, right? So I didn't have a really great relationship with him. And I get a text, this is a couple years ago. I get a text that says, I'm in the hospital, probably had a heart attack. I'll let you know what's going on. So it's 2 hours away, so I go, and so he had a massive heart attack. They ended up doing quadruple bypass. They actually thought they were going to have to do 5, which is unheard of. When they got him out, it took an extra 3 days. Normally, when you have bypass surgery, you come off the vent the next day and you're up. Well, they want you up walking around. It took him 4 days to come off the vent. And then he had 10 mini strokes in his bed in the regular room, to the point where, now this was 2 years ago, so, when was it, when was it? I think it was 3 years ago. I can't remember. No, it was just 2 years ago. So they asked him who the president was. He said Bill Clinton. And they asked him what year it was, and it was, the first time they asked him, it was 1984. The second time they asked him, it was 1993. And the third time they asked him, his mini strokes had gotten so bad that he was trying to answer them with his arm. His signals had crossed so much because he was having a stroke that he thought he was talking, but his arm was moving. And he would stretch his arm out, and he was like, get this mad face because he was trying to, he thought he was telling them what, giving them the answer, and it just wasn't coming. So they had to take him back to intensive care for another 8 days. We didn't know. We didn't know if he was going to make it or not. We didn't know what was going on. When the doctor finally came in and told us he's going to be okay, here's what happened, here's what we're doing to fix it, and it should be about 30 days. You know, we'll get him out of here, we'll send him to a short-term rehabilitation place where he can stay for a couple weeks, and they can get him walking and talking right, and then he'll be going home. And we cried tears of joy. Because it was, I mean, we didn't know. I'm not a doctor. I didn't play one on TV. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express. We cried tears of joy. That was an amazing thing. And sometimes, you know, when God moves and answers prayers, there's power in us acknowledging that with our tears. And then there's something where in Revelation where God tells us that He'll wipe all of our tears away. And there's power in that. You know, there's power in us being okay enough to shed our tears and knowing that God's going to wipe our tears. Marty, do you need to go?
No.
Okay. You good?
Yeah.
We good. All right. So here's what I want to say in closing. I'm going to try to wrap this up because we're almost right on. I had to go for 30 minutes at least, so because I had to plot out my time. So never be afraid to let other people see you cry. Especially in this setting, because you never know who's going to come alongside you and weep with you while you're weeping. Walk with you through whatever you're walking through. Or have already walked that path and will take you by the hand and say, hey, I've already been down this road. Here's what I did. And understand that our tears benefit us. For multiple reasons. Sometimes it's stress and it's a relief to get that stuff off our chest. Sometimes it's pain that needs to come out. Sometimes it's emotional pain. And, you know, our tears benefit us. Sometimes you just got something in your eye and you need to get it out. That helps us physically, benefits us physically. Know that the creator of the universe knows how it feels to shed tears. Jesus wept. He knows how you feel when you're crying. It's not a foreign thing to him. It's not like, you know, it's not like there's something, well, I can empathize with you, but I don't know what you're going through. Jesus knows what you're going through. He did the same thing. He wept. And understand that your tears are important to God and they move His Spirit. They move Him on your behalf. You know, and know that our tears will be wiped away. So I want to pray real quick, and then I got some things I want to talk about, but Joshua, you can, when I get done praying, you can stop the thing. So Father, I ask you to comfort us when our tears flow. Allow us to come to you with our concerns, our questions, pain, our issues. Surround us with your mercy and grace and help us to embrace our tears and turn them over to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.